Why play built different? Well, you could have a strong opener to tempo, you're in a high econ encounter so you're going to have lots of gold in order to actually hit high cost units and upgrade them, or you want to have a unique experience because built diff relies on you not playing trades, which is the complete opposite of what you normally do in TFT. However, this needs high econ. You need a lot of gold. Built diff caps very high if you're playing around many 4 costs and many 5 costs. So you need high econ. You need the econ to hit the levels as well as to hit the upgrades on multiple units in order to properly cap your board. Additionally, it's hard to cap if you low roll. If you don't find early upgrades, without the extra synergies that other boards can stabilize around, you often can lose a lot of rounds on stage 4 and can often just easily go bot 4. Additionally, built diff plays really into flexibility, and whatever units you hit you can upgrade and stabilize around them, so it's very easy to bot for if you tunnel vision while playing built diff trying to play particular units. So if you like my content, as per usual, make sure to like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I'm gonna have my art store open soon, probably at the start of the next week, so that's gonna be our 5,000 sub goal, and then I'm gonna start advertising for our 10,000 sub goal, which is gonna be an RP giveaway, so make sure to subscribe if you're interested in that. But yeah, thank you for supporting me up until now. So, what is built diff? Built diff, your units with no traits active gain 300 to 600 health and 45 to 75% attack speed based on current stage. So as the game progresses, you will get more health and more attack speed until you cap out around that 675% attack speed. This augment was buffed, and basically it's only offered on 2-1. So if you take built diff, you're basically structuring your entire game plan around the idea that you're just going to be playing no traits. So that means if 2 units share the same trait, they immediately do not get the health and the attack speed. At a glance, it might look like this isn't that great because it's like, oh, I don't get to play any synergies. However, 600 health and 75% attack speed is massive. Attack speed is good on every unit. It's one of the best stats in TFT. It helps AP units to cast. It helps AD units to do damage. So everybody can make use of attack speed. And HP just makes your board absolutely unkillable. So giving them 600 HP, it's a massive boost in survivability for everybody. So your team is going to be tanky. It's going to have a lot of damage. What really brings out the best of built diff is playing around higher cost units, because if you're just playing low cost units, a lot of times low cost units, like, you know, think about sentinels, right? The sentinels, like the low cost sentinels like Singed and Irelia and Leona, they don't really do that much until you hit like a vertical sentinel trait, which makes them very tanky because they themselves don't have very strong stats. That's why with built diff, I always say you need a lot of econ, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to play high cost units that are innately a lot stronger, because then without the traits, they will still do a lot of work with the attack speed and the HP. They can make use of those stats because they themselves are already a stronger kit, a stronger starting point to build from. So, when should you play built diff? I've been saying it a lot. You're gonna hear this so many times in this video. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say it. Like, you need to be rich. You need to have a lot of econ. That's the main limiting factor. Even if your spot you think it's good for built diff, I would not take built diff if I'm not in like Scuttle Puddle or Gold Sub or like Loot Sub, maybe Loot Sub, but not really. Like, unless you're getting a bunch of gold or it's a really good gold opener, you already have like, you're already making 10 gold or something. Unless you're really strong, I would not unless you're really strong early and you have a lot of money, I would not play built diff, because you need to cap out around, it's so expensive. It's probably the most expensive board, so you could just absolutely plummet to the depths of LP losses if you do not have econ. And the other part when you should play it is when you have a lot of econ, of course. Like, you just need a lot of econ. So now let's go through some boards. So when we're thinking about built diff, like I said before, the main way that you usually cap out around built diff is playing around 4 and 5 cost units. So the 4 cost units, the benefit is that a lot of the 4 cost units, innately, if you read their abilities and you read their skills, they do a lot of damage, and they also have a lot of strength in their base stats. So they have good base stats and they have good amounts of damage. So you can usually get by playing a lot of different 4 costs on your board, and you just vomit them on your board. You make whatever items you can, and you stabilize around whoever you hit as a 2-star upgrade. So let's say we're trying to think about built diff in terms of just 4 costs here. If you look at the 4 costs, Emissary actually deactivates if you have 2 Emissary units in. So if you find an Abessa and a Garen, you can actually play them. But if you play only one of them, they'll have Emissary active and they will lose the built diff buff, which kind of ruins the point of it. I've seen people with Emissary play Emissary with built diff just because you sack the Emissary, but you get Emissary bonus on all of your units. For example, because they're getting a lot of HP, you can play a random Mbessa, which will give your whole team 14 armor. Which you don't get built diff on Mbessa, but everybody on your team gets 14 armor. So if you're not carrying around Mbessa, you can just play a random Emissary unit to buff your board. That's still something that exists, right? But additionally, if you want to remove units, a lot of times, you know, Mundo and Silco both have Dominators, so a lot of times you end up not playing around Silco, because Silco doesn't do that much without Dominator. And then Echo is often, like, you know, usually want Ambusher, but usually you drop one of the scrap units. For this sake of example, let's just drop Corki. And typically your board is playing around these couple of units that don't share any synergies. And then if you want to play carry Mbessa, then you have to play Garen. If not, you can just play an Emissary unit to buff your board. This is the idea around playing around 4 costs. Now, whenever I'm looking at built diff, you always want to pick units that do a lot with the HP and the attack speed. So if I'm thinking about units and I'm trying to, like, massage my head and think to myself, what unit really wants a bunch of attack speed, or what unit really wants a bunch of HP? So if we think about the units that want HP, any melee user will want HP, right? Any tank will want HP, but typically the ones that work the best are the ones that do damage, because you can stabilize your board around them pretty well. So something like Echo, Vi, and Mbessa are typically really strong. Also, Mundo in some cases is quite strong, and Elise, because they have HP scaling. Or not Elise, sorry. Mundo has HP scaling. So Mundo becomes energized and heals more based on the extra HP that he gets, so you can make use of the HP. And all of your melee carries will be able to survive longer and do more damage with the attack speed. The other unit that really wants attack speed is Twitch. So a lot of times you play around Twitch. Twitch becomes very strong. The starting AS makes Twitch, like, even without Sniper and without Experiment, usually Twitch doesn't do anything without Sniper and Experiment, but because you get him so much starting attack speed, 75 attack speed, he absolutely melts, because he stacks up his Guinsoo so fast that he attacks faster than any other Twitch, like no Twitch has attacked before, and spreads a huge amount of damage and does massive damage. So this is like thinking about 4 costs. Now, the problem with built diff is that if you play just around 4 costs, you're typically not going to cap very high. That's the big problem, because it doesn't matter which 4 costs you play. The main thing that you want to hit are the 5 costs. So everything that I said applied before, right? If you look at the 5 costs, the only ones that have traits that are unique to them are Rumble and Savika. So usually you don't play Rumble and Savika. But all the other 5 costs are pretty much fair game. Typically, the 5 cost that is make or break with built diff, the one that can make the best use of all the stats, is both Jace and Mordekaiser. Typically it's more Mordekaiser, but Jace with attack speed is really strong and you get this extra crystal. But Mordekaiser, this is built diff. If you had to put a logo on built diff, it would be Mordekaiser himself. This is the embodiment of built diff. Because think about it. What do you want in built diff? You want a melee carry a lot of the time. Not always, but typically a melee carry can make use of both attack speed as well as HP. Mordekaiser is the best melee carry without any synergies. Dominator doesn't really do anything. A lot of times you play Mordekaiser without Dominator and he's totally fine, because Dominator gives you AP on the first cast, but he doesn't cast multiple times, so it doesn't, like, ramp up his AP that much. So Dominator is useless on him. Conqueror is also pretty useless. A lot of times when you're playing Mordekaiser, you're not playing it with Conqueror. That's not the reason he's broken. He's just a really strong unit. He does a lot of damage, really good built-in kit, gets a bunch, scales really well off items, insanely strong. And then if you look at his kit, the main thing you want with Mordekaiser is for him to attack a lot, because he has this little window where he ascends, and when he ascends, he gets this Omnivamp attack range, and he does like this insane amount of damage, right? When he does this damage, you have like a little window. I think it's 10 seconds. You have 10-second window where he's just gonna wail away and beat the shit out of everybody with his giant hammer, right? When he does that, you just want a bunch of attack speed. If you give him a bunch of HP and a bunch of attack speed, you help him survive a lot, and you help him to do more damage in that particular moment of time. So I cannot stress it enough. The way to cap out this board is you need to hit a Mordekaiser. This is where everything becomes really high roll and really awkward, because you can't just say to yourself, I'm just going to hit a Mordekaiser, GG easy. It's more so like if you hit a Mordekaiser, and especially a Mordekaiser 2, you're pretty much playing for a first. So that's the way that you should kind of think about built diff. You should always think about capping out around the 5 costs. Of course, the other 5 costs are also viable. Malzahar is good, has a really good built-in kit. So does LeBlanc with damage amp effects, right? you usually just want to play around the 5 cost. This is how you win with built diff. This is why I say you need a lot of gold and you need to be high roll. Because let's go over now the board and in terms of items. Let's just talk about it in general. So I'm going to put all the units on once again. I'm going to put everybody in. And let's just like focus on certain units. I'm just going to say thematically, right? A lot of times when you're playing built diff, you're playing around Twitch as a backline unit. Maybe Zoe if you have like too many AP items. And then let's just pick some frontline units. I would say like a lot of times your board looks something like, I don't know, something like this, roughly speaking, right? You have some sort of melee user and then you have a backline user that scales off of time because your frontline's going to be so beefy with the extra HP that a Gwinsu user would do really well. If you're playing around Twitch, you need to have a Gwinsu on him. Damage works really well. I like to have red buff on him in these type of built diff cases because he just spreads the burn, but you don't really need that. Items are pretty flexible. You're just looking if you have AD items, you typically want to angle yourself maybe towards a Twitch. If you're thinking about melee frontline, I really like Vi. Vi can make great use of built diff. You don't really care too much about Caitlyn because a lot of times you're playing around Twitch if you're playing snipers anyways with that setup, and then you can't play Twitch and Caitlyn because they would activate a trait with each other. Elise is pretty good just because of stun. You want frontlines to stall, especially if you're playing around a backline unit, but really any frontline can work out nicely because they have the huge amounts of HP. Whenever I'm thinking of frontline units though, I'm trying to think about melee frontline items because if I'm trying to establish a dual carry, I typically want to have like, you know, a melee frontline and then a backline user that is ramping up with a Gwinsu. So if you're thinking about melee items, usually I'll split between some sort of backline items and some sort of melee items. So like something like, you know, Sterix, BT on Vi would be really strong. Something like full tank items or casting on Elise or Alawi would be quite strong. And then like, of course, if you're playing around Mordekaiser, if you have a Mordekaiser, QSS is Mordekaiser's best item. But a lot of times just making general melee items, general things for survivability and melee damage works out really well. Because you just pick one of the melee carries and they can make great use out of the HP as well as the they can make great use out of HP as well as the what's it called, attack speed that you would get. It's because they're damage dealers that need to be tanky. So I've been kind of like very fluffy about how I describe built diff, but the main part about built diff, this is a really big concept that you guys have to understand, is you have to be very flexible when you play built diff. You cannot tunnel vision on a particular comp. Like, I'm sure everybody will say the best built diff board looks something like this. And I'm sure I'm even going to get comments about it, even though I'm talking about it right now. Like, somebody's going to, I swear there's going to be somebody that comments and says, this is the best built diff board. I had really good, like, this is the way to win with built diff. And I'm just going to be like, guys, like, can we please, like, relax a little bit? Because, like, usually, like, something like this. And then you just play multiple copies of the units, right? A lot of times, like, people say these are, like, the best built diff units. Basically, you get the Vi, which lives forever and does a lot of damage, and then she also stuns. So you get Vi that can do, like, multicasting stun that stalls out the board. Alawi could have great use of just, like, living forever, but not really sometimes, depending on if you have good armor items to make up for the fact that she doesn't have Sentinel. Mordekaiser is definitely, like, the best unit that you can possibly hit, and Elise is just really fucking strong, right? Because she has stuns as well, so if Elise gets multiple casts off, you win really easily. Twitch, a lot of the times, if you play Twitch with built diff, Twitch will easily be the most highest damage dealer. So Twitch is often a priority, and a lot of times if you're playing built diff, you might make a Gwinsu in anticipation of playing a Twitch. Additionally, you can play other damage dealers, whichever ones you hit. A lot of times I end up with a board that looks something like this. Malzahar, typically nobody plays him, so it's easy to hit sometimes, and Malzahar does a lot of damage. He also shreds, so he increases the amount of AP damage that you do without having to dedicate towards AP items. Quirky sometimes can do some damage. He also sunders, so if you don't have good sundering items, he can also fill in the gaps there. And then Mordekaiser and obviously the frontline units. Now, when I say you have to play flexibly, what if in your lobby a bunch of people are playing Twitch? Should you be planning to play around Twitch with built diff? No. What you should always do with built diff is you should try and play the forecast that nobody else is playing. What you should do is when you take built diff, you have to look around and say to yourself, what are other people playing? Let's say everybody in the lobby is playing Twitch and Mundo. Right? Twitch and Mundo. Everybody's playing Twitch and Mundo. Right? They're all playing like Experiment, let's say. If they're all playing Experiment, and let's say they're holding on to Vise as well, right? These three units are highly contested in the lobby. What should you do? Well, you should structure your game plan and your items around units that aren't contested, because it's going to make it easier for you to hit. Your strength is not in playing a bunch of 4 costs. It's playing a bunch of 4 cost 2 stars. If you can 2-star everybody on your board, you pretty much win for free. Each of these units does an insane amount of damage, has an insane amount of tankiness. It does not matter the exact items on them, but you have a demon-like board because you just have so much HP and so much attack speed that you're bound to just win. You have so many threats on your board. So many threats that your opponent can't deal with all of them. But that only happens if you can upgrade all of them. Each one of these units costs 12 gold to upgrade. 12 gold, 12 gold, 12 gold, 12 gold. 15 gold. This is literally like 50 gold right now. And I don't even have a whole board. It's like half a board and it's like 50 gold. It's extremely expensive. So you don't want to be playing narrow and playing contested. Whatever you hit, you roll down. Whatever unit you hit, whether it be an Echo, an Elise, an Alawi, a Heimer, a Vi, anything that you hit, you structure your board around that idea, right? You want to, like, if you look and, like, you know, obviously, like, you can't wait until you hit to plan out your items. So what I would do is I would scout early, see what other people are playing. If there's a lot of people that slam Gwinsu and they all look like they're playing Twitch, don't make a Gwinsu in anticipation of Twitch. Prioritize yourself to say, okay, maybe nobody's going to be playing around melee carries. Maybe nobody's playing Echo and nobody's playing Vi, and nobody's playing Mbessa, for example, right? Let me take these units and build melee items and stabilize myself around those ones. When you're playing built diff, a lot of times, if everybody's playing 4 costs, it helps you out a lot because it makes it easier for you to just hit the scraps for free. Pretty much any unit could become useful. Even Zoe with a bunch of attack speed can do massive amounts of damage. Any 5 cost is extremely strong with built diff, so if you hit any of them that are uncontested, that's great. But you always want to plan your board a little bit around the idea that you want to play the units that nobody else is playing. Additionally, if let's say nobody's playing Echo, a lot of times you can hit multiple copies of the same unit because it's so uncontested. A lot of times in built diff, the built diff player just randomly hits a 3-star because they just find so many copies of the uncontested unit and everybody else is playing around 4 costs. If they try and hold even a couple on bench as extra, you just hit for free, and a lot of times you just win the game because you have a 3-star version of a unit that you just hit out of nowhere. That's the idea with built diff. You always want to be flexible. A lot of times people tunnel vision. I see in my games all the time, everybody wants to play built diff, Twitch is the only unit that's good, GG, I need a Twitch or nothing. And they have 3 items on a Twitch 1, and they go 8th. That happens all the time. It does not matter if you can hit Twitch later, if anything, right? Just always prioritize the units that nobody is playing, because the board is so expensive that you're better off just hitting 2-star of everybody else so that you're stable. But either way, if I'm talking about a max cap kind of board, it would look something along the lines of like Mordekaiser, Elise, Vi. Like, I think these ones are really strong just because of the stuns that they give. It gives you a lot of utility and value. And I think that there's also other copies of units that could be really good. I like Mundo if I don't hit a Mordekaiser. Obviously, they share Dominator, so you have to pick one or the other. If I hit a Mundo 2, he scales off HP, and I find that he's quite reliable in built diff. But of course, you shouldn't also be scared about playing multiple copies of units. Things like double Vi, double Elise works really well because they both have stuns, and they, like, you know, you don't have to be like, ooh, cooties, I have 2 copies of the same unit. Them being able to do stuns is massive because it stalls out your board, especially if you're playing around Twitch with a Gwinsu. And then Twitch, you know, obviously you can just go like full crit build, or you can go many different other items. The attack speed is so high on Twitch that he's going to do a lot of damage anyways, right? A lot of times I end up playing Garen and Mbessa if nobody's playing around Garen and Mbessa. Garen and Mbessa works out really well. Garen scales off HP, so he has like a passive where he heals based on his HP whenever he deals damage. So if you give him more HP, he heals a bit more, and he also gains a shield that scales off of his HP, which is nice. You don't get the emissary bonus, but instead you can just like play around these units, and then you can put like your tank items on either, your melee items on either Mbessa or Vi, depending on which one you hit, which can work out pretty well. The problem with playing around Mbessa is that then it makes it so you can't play around Mordekaiser, but that's just how sometimes the thing works out. So hopefully I gave you guys enough tools to understand like some level of flexibility when you're playing around built diff. A lot of times your board will look something like this. This is a board that I commonly end up hitting, something like this, and then extra front line. Sometimes I'll just have like a random Alawi if I don't have double copies of everybody, right? And this will be like a board that I'll eventually hit on like level 8. It'll look something like this, or something like another 4-cost front line, like an Echo, or not an Echo, sometimes I have Quirky. like some other frontline at some point. Ooh, sometimes I had Jace as well. But anyways, the idea here is that you want to cap out on your 5 cost. Typically, you're always going to roll on level 8. That's the main thing, right? You never really want to go... This isn't like a fast 9 kind of comp unless you're really high rolling. A lot of times you're hoping to hit your 5 cost upgrades on level 8. You have a lot of value rolling on level 8 because sometimes you can just hit multiple copies of 4 costs. The board's really expensive, so you can't really waste gold to go to level 9, right? Fitting in an extra unit isn't as useful as 2-starring all of the units on your board. If you get something like this, you're pretty much winning. There's nothing, like, it doesn't matter what the units are. If you have 2-star versions of everybody on your board, each of these units are so hard to kill, and they all do so much damage individually that you will just win the game. So you always want to stay on level 8 as long as possible, unless you upgrade everybody, or like the units that you have to do, you don't want to upgrade, like you want to switch them out anyways for 5 costs. Like let's say you have like a Mundo 1 instead of a Mordekaiser here, right? Let's say this is your board. Maybe here you can decide to go 9 because everybody's upgraded and you probably want to switch out Mundo, so maybe going 9 is a good idea. But typically you want to stay on level 8. That's like the main thing that you want to do. Stay on level 8, roll for everybody. If you have a preference, Twitch is obviously one of the better ones. Mordekaiser is obviously one of the better ones. I would make backline items, either backline AD or AP, depending on what the lobby is playing. You either decide to make AP backline or AD backline, and then play built div with whichever one that you could itemize towards, right? If everybody's playing AD in your lobby, itemize AP backline. If everybody's playing AP in your lobby, itemize AD backline, and then play either Twitch or Corki. And then eventually, if you hit a Jace, you can play a Jace over Elise, and then Jace can be your main carry in the backline just without Form Swapper, because Jace with built diff will be very strong. If you are playing like around frontline carries, you always want to make like generic frontline items. Stuff like a Bloodthirster is really great. QSS is good if you think you can hit around Mordekaiser, right? If you think that you're going to make it, like you're tempoing the lobby very hard and you're winning a lot of the early game rounds, then you might want to take a QSS for the Mordekaiser, because then you'll just win the game for free, especially if you hit Mordekaiser too. So that's like your general breakdown of items, right? Either itemize towards AD backline or itemize generic AP backline. And then also, or generalized, make generic frontline either AP or AD items, but typically just frontline melee items are just good to have. Stuff like Bloodthirsters, Edge of Knights, QSS, things that can work on multiple different units, because you're just going to itemize towards one of these depending on what the lobby is playing. If nobody's playing around melee, you play around the melee. If nobody's playing around AD, you play around the AD. If nobody's playing around AP, you play the AP. And no matter what you hit, you just stabilize around whoever you hit. All of them will be fine. The main thing is just finding as many upgrades as possible and then using those to steamroll your opponents, and then that's the way that you usually cap out your board very high. Build div is very contingent. In order to get like a top 1 and a top 2, this is a way to get a reliable 4th, but in order to get top 1 and top 2, you need to hit those 2-star 5 costs, right? 2-star 5 costs, you win the game instantly, right? These are always going to be way stronger. Well, maybe not than Twitch. I don't know exactly, because Twitch scales really well off the attack speed, but usually the 2-star 5 cost is what you're going for. Now, early game. This is another point of contention. Now, I've already explained how much you have to invest in, right? If we just take, like I said before, let's say you have 3 different 4 costs, right? And you're investing 12 gold in each of them to upgrade them. Your board is very expensive. You typically are just playing around the 4 cost units. If you're not playing around the 4 cost units, usually just like an in-between type of unit. You know, like you have some unit like, I don't know, I can't find one right now. You have some in-between unit that you're itemizing. Usually you're not re-rolling with built diff. You're not re-rolling for like 3-star 3 costs or 3-star 2 costs, because they just don't get the benefit of like the synergies that help them, the traits that help them to become relevant later. So typically you're trying to play around 4 costs and 5 costs. If you add up the gold, 12 gold, 12 gold, 12 gold, 12 gold, what is that? 12 times 4? 48. This is 50 gold. 50 gold just to play and upgrade the units on the board. And this is half of the board, right? I still have 4 other units to play on the board. It is ridiculously expensive. So it does cap very high. You are very strong, but it's extremely expensive. What does that mean for your early game? I would not take built diff unless I have a very strong early game. Let's say I have some units. Let's just pick some random ass units that maybe are built diff. This, right? I would not, let's say this is my opener, right? I have these units and I have built diff. It's like, oh, cool, built diff. I would not play built diff unless you're high rolling your opener, right? Unless I have like multiple upgrades, for example, then I would consider built diff. Because what you want to do is you want to win all of the early game stages. Built diff has this thing where you're very strong on stage 2 because you get a bunch of HP and a bunch of attack speed, so you're just stronger than everybody else. It's an insanely strong combat augment. Then in your mid game, you're typically very weak because you're trying to save up gold in order to make it to stage 8, level 8, and like upgrade your board. And then after that, if you upgrade everybody, you're really strong. So you want to win rounds because it will help you to generate gold. You get gold for winning each round, and additionally you save a bunch of HP that will help you in order to hit your board late game. Unless you have something like this, and then you also have like a good melee item, for example, or if you're playing like a backline item, like let's say this is your board, you have like a backline item that you can play. You want to have a strong board, right? Upgraded units are always better than non-upgraded units, and you're not playing any synergies, so it doesn't matter to like have like a good solid whatever. You're relying strictly on the power of the units themselves. So you need to have items that are slammable, right? So you have to look at your items and say to yourself, am I comfortable making the item out of the components that I have? Does it fit with my board? And do I have upgrades? If all of those are true, then I would take built diff, and typically you're just trying to win out on stage 2, try and win as many rounds on stage 3 as possible, and save as much gold, because you're basically going to need like 80 to 100 gold to roll down in order to actually stabilize and hit a very strong board on level 8. You just need an infinite amount of gold. So typically what I would say is that I wouldn't play built diff unless I have really good econ. If you don't have econ with built diff, you are probably going to go 8th. You probably will hit nothing. Your units will die instantly, especially if you're playing around melee carries. You won't hit the units and you'll just lose out. It's very common for that to happen. So, conditions for success with built diff. Hopefully I explained it. I know it's not like a clear cut, this is the best unit, this is the whatever, but that's how built diff is. You have to just have a lot of gold. You have to hit whatever you can. Structure your board around the 2 stars that you hit. When you do your roll down, you look for generic ideas. AD, AP, melee, and you buy everybody, and then whichever one you hit 2-star of, you put your items on that unit. You have removers. If you hit something better later like Twitch or Mordekaiser, you can switch things around and fix up your board. That's totally fine, but you want to have lots of gold, right? So much gold, it is very expensive. If you don't have gold and you take built diff, there's sometimes you'll see built diff and you'll be like, wow, this guy won for free, and then you'll take built diff and you'll lose. The main difference between the two, a winning board and a losing board with built diff, is the amount of gold that you have in order to hit the board. Also, something it sounds contrary, but when you're playing built diff, you do not want to be in a lobby that is reroll. If you look around and there are a lot of rerollers in your lobby, you are not playing built diff. Do not click this augment. You want to click this augment when you look around and everybody is playing 4 costs, because you just take the other ones, and you will be stronger if you take the other ones. So if you look around and there's one guy that's playing Violet, I know Violet reroll isn't a thing anymore, but just for sake of example, one guy's playing Zeri, one guy's playing Renata, one guy's playing, I don't know, pick another reroll, one guy's rerolling Nami, right? Like, if people are rerolling units, they're not buying 4 costs, which makes it harder for you to hit your 4 costs because they're not thinning out the pool. What you want to see is you want to see somebody that's like playing Black Rose Silco, and he's buying all of these units. And then you want to see somebody else that's playing Heimerdinger, and he's buying these units, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of times in the lobby where there's 2 people playing Heimer, and there's 2 people playing Silco or some shit. You want to see this because you're like, oh, bet, I'm going to play Vi, I'm going to play Twitch, and I'm going to play everything that they're not playing, right? They buy all of these units, they waste their money, they're all contesting each other, they're all going 8th, and you have 2-star Twitch out of nowhere, 2-star Vi out of nowhere, 2-star Ek out of nowhere, and you're just clapping your hands. You're like, GG, I just win the game for free, right? This guy's buying Corki, right? Who cares? You just play Echo, right? Like, these guys that are buying multiple 4 costs in a particular comp, like this Silco player is probably also buying, like, look at these, right? If somebody's playing Silco, they're buying Elise, Mundo, Silco, and Garen, right? If somebody's playing Heimer, they're buying Corki, Heimer, and Alawi. It's okay. Let them play these units. And let's say they're not playing Heimer. Let's say they were playing like Twitch and they were buying this, right? They were buying Twitch and Mundo and Elise, right? Don't structure your game plan around Twitch and Elise because you won't hit them. Structure your game plan around Vi and Echo. Maybe play a backline AP unit that you can eventually put on a Malzahar. Malzahar is pretty good with built diff, I find, right? Like, there's opportunity for you to fill in the gaps. You want to see other people playing 4 costs. Look at what they're doing and say to yourself, okay, they're playing this unit, that person's playing this unit, that person's playing this unit, and then put in your team planner all the units that they aren't playing. And that's going to help you out so much, because if you're stable earlier and you hit with more gold, maybe you even go 9. Your goal eventually is to, if you hit a Mordekaiser 2, that's your goal. If you hit Mordekaiser 2, you win the game a lot of the time. If you hit Jace 2, you probably win the game as well, right? Like these 5 cost upgrades are the ones you care about more, and you want to have as much gold as possible to hit all of your units. Maybe you go 9, typically you don't, but you just want to have a lot of gold because you need to roll, upgrade everybody, and hit those 5 costs as well. So you need like infinite resources. That's why I wouldn't play this unless I was in Scuttle Puddle or Gold Sub, or it was like a high econ count. Like, you know, like when you sometimes you start the game and you get like 20 gold for free. Those are the ones that you take. You always want to take econ augments after built diff, right? Built diff is a strong enough combat, so your second augment should be econ for sure. Your third augment could be a combat, but you definitely want econ augments to supplement this as well. High roll opener is really strong, right? I explained it before. You want to be win streaking on stage 2. If you spend too much time losing with built diff, you won't have the time to hit all of your units. Built diff does fall off if you don't hit your upgraded 4 costs. So sometimes you could low roll, right? Even if you're playing uncontested, you might hit like, you know, XXXXX all these units, right? I don't know, I should click some more just to fill in the space, right? Oh my god, I'm so bad at... I want like random things just so that it doesn't like... whatever. You know what I mean, right? You can hit all of these units, and if they're not 2-starred, your front line dies too fast, and then your back line dies, and you lose out on stage 4. It's very common for you to just lose out for free on stage 4. So you don't want to, you want to have HP so that you can like compensate for those low rolls a little bit. And also you want to be winning rounds because you can generate some gold by that. So I wouldn't take built diff unless you have a high roll opener, because you want to save HP as well as you want to streak. The win streak in gold is going to be way better than the lose streak in gold, just because you're going to have a huge amount of resources, both HP and gold, in order to actually hit your board and cap out very high. Additionally, lots of gold to upgrade units. It's always important. And early 5 costs are very good. Any 5 cost, I think typically like the tier chart is like, you know, a 5 cost is better than a 4 cost, but like a 2-star 4 cost is better than a 5 cost. Build diff's a little bit weird, but typically if you see a 5 cost, you just want to hold on to all of them. And they're typically going to be good. You're not going to, I guarantee you're not going to upgrade every single 4 cost, especially on your first roll down. So a lot of times you're going to have like some trash in the background, right? Like you're going to have like some, like, I don't know, like a Corki, right? Like if I had to pick between a Corki and a Caitlyn, you know, obviously the Caitlyn's going to be stronger than a Corki 1, you know, stuff like that. As long as they don't have an innate trait active, like Rumble has this, what's called Junker King, for example. If they don't have an innate trait, they're going to be good enough to just play on your board. So just be ready for early 5 costs. But anyways, that's built diff. I know it's not the greatest guide. I heard somebody in one of my comments was asking me for more videos, like me showing my playthrough. The playthrough videos do so much worse, and even when I put them at the end of these guides, they also like do really poorly in terms of the stats. Like it just decreases everything on YouTube side because nobody watches them. I'm going to try and do like one gameplay video a week, and I'm also going to do gameplay videos every other day on members only, just because I want to separate it so it doesn't like kill my YouTube channel. Because, you know, I'm trying my best here to like balance, like, you know, making people actually see my videos, which we've had a huge dip in over the course of January. So I'll try my best, but we'll see. Anyways, thank you for watching. Hopefully that was enjoyable, and yes, see you guys later. Bye bye.